Virtuoso violinist Andrew Beer and charismatic conductor Holly Mathieson are working with the St Matthew's Chamber Orchestra this week. Andrew's day job is concertmaster of the Auckland Philharmonic Orchestra, but he's also an established soloist and chamber musician. Holly is back to conduct the orchestra for the third time in a break from her life in Scotland, where she just recently won the job of assistant conductor at the Royal Scottish National Orchestra. She's also on trial for another job in the United States. The programme for this Sunday afternoon's concert is a goodie, starting with Debussy's Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, from there to the beauties of Ravel's Cigane, the violin and orchestra, and Chausson's Poem, featuring Andrew, and then Tchaikovsky's Second Symphony. Let's start with a recording of Debussy's Sublime Prelude. The flute soloist is Marie-André Benet with Yannick Nézet-Séguin and his Montreal Metropolitan Orchestra. The opening of Debussy's Prelude of the Afternoon of a Faun, Montreal Metropolitan Orchestra, Yannick Nézet-Séguin conducting. Well, conductor Holly Mathieson will conduct this work with the St Matthew's Chamber Orchestra this Sunday. She's our guest, along with mentioning Canadian because of course that was a Canadian orchestra, soloist Andrew Beer, who now lives in New Zealand. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Abby.
I guess coming from Canada and coming from the Montreal Symphony, you have slightly mixed feelings about the Metropolitan Orchestra, Andrew.
Oh, no, they're both great orchestras. It's wonderful that a city can support two major orchestras like that.
Isn't it incredible?
Yes.
Holly, have you worked in, of course you've worked in London, you worked in Edinburgh. Is that where the Royal Scottish National Orchestra is based?
No, Glasgow,
Oh,
actually.
actually? And is there more than one professional orchestra there?
There are. Well, I haven't started with the RSNO yet. We move up in October for that. But I lived there 2 years ago part-time when I was working with BBC Scottish, also in Glasgow. So, yeah, it's sort of the same. Two very big, very good orchestras about 5 minutes walk from each other. And actually, the RSNO is currently chief conductor is a Canadian.
Peter Ingen.
Yeah, Peter Ingen.
Oh, wow, Canadians get around, don't they,
Yeah,
Andrew?
they're taking over the world.
What's it like starting a concert with such a well-known piece as the Debussy?
That aspect of it doesn't worry me too much, actually. I mean, I suppose it's good from the audience's perspective that it relaxes them in some way. And particularly that piece of music, I mean, it's just so divine. You can't not enjoy it. And particularly the chanson and the cigane, neither of them are really regularly performed concerto pieces, actually. So for a lot of people, they'll be unknown or very little known compared to, say, a Mendelssohn or a Tchaikovsky or a Brahms. So it's nice to have something very familiar at the beginning and such iconically French music to introduce that first half. I think it's probably more of a stressor for the wind section, particularly the flautist.
Of course.
I mean, it's just full of audition excerpts for the wind soloists. So it's probably a little more stressful for them starting with it than it would be for me.
What about for you as a player, Andrew? I know probably not in this concert, but in your regular job at the APO as a concert master, what stress does it put on the players when it's something that the audience knows every bar of?
We try not to think about that in the concert. I'd say we're just going more for the emotions of the piece. I'd say it's more stressful in rehearsals when we all know the music so well and we're sort of judging each other and trying to do the very best that we can.
I think there are actually real benefits to doing a piece that the audience knows really well. If you're doing something new, you know, human brains prefer recognition than cognition. And so often if you introduce a newer piece, even if it's romantic or classical repertoire, it won't be till the second or third time an audience hears it that they can really appreciate it and think, okay, great, the melody I like is coming up again. Or so there's a really nice element to doing something so well known. You know they're singing it inside their head as you play it and anticipating things and looking forward to a certain section. And I think it really increases the enjoyment for the audience, actually, which is a nice feeling as a performer.
Oh, yeah, it's a wonderful feeling for us on the other side, believe me, Holly. What about all this French music, Andrew? Did you pick the Ravel and Chanson?
I did, yeah. I've always had an affinity for French music, and I also like to imagine there's some sort of connection between my violin and my bow, which were both made in Paris in the 19th century, and 19th century French music. You never know the history of the instrument that you play on, but it's nice to imagine that possibly my violin might have met Ravel or Chausson at some point.
Well, it's sure to have, surely, if it's from Paris and these are two of the eminent French composers of the period.
Yes.
Where did you get your French violin and who made it?
It's made by Jean-Baptiste Villaume, and it's made in 1845, so it's sort of his middle period. Of course, he's one of the great, possibly the second greatest French maker after Leopold. And I bought it in Boston from Christopher Runing, who's sort of one of the top luthiers in the world right now.
Did you see that story about the young player who was trying to travel transatlantic with her cello and got told she needed a visa by British Airlines, and then he ended up buying a much cheaper seat from United Airlines who didn't require a visa for the cello? What a ridiculous story. Can it be real?
Yes, it's always there's always a new story every 6 months about that. I actually leave a second violin in Vancouver so that I'd never have to travel with my Villaume unless absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good thinking.
Saves a little stress.
Absolutely, and saves, extra stress on the instrument itself, because when it travels a lot like that, you must have to spend a lot of time retuning.
Yes, the dryness of the plane and the changes in air pressure and all that. Yeah.
I'm talking to Andrew Beer and Holly Mathieson, who are working with us at Matthews Chamber Orchestra this Sunday. Now, Holly, congratulations on the job which you take up soon, not quite yet, with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra. 300 applicants plus?
Yeah.
What did they make you do?
Well, the first round we had 3 pieces, and there were 7 of us. And the second round, 4 pieces. And in both rounds you had sort of 15 to 20 minutes per piece to rehearse with the orchestra. And then there was an interview. And it was interesting for me as an audition process because it was all massive repertoire. In my understanding, the RSNO really specialise in rich, dark, romantic, big sound repertoire, and which works out really well for me because I think that's what I probably at the moment do better as well.
Give me some examples.
Well, the first piece I had to do in the audition was Rack 2, which is just, stonking piece of music, which I'd never conducted. Actually, I've got it later next season, so it was a good taste test. But that's a big sound to immediately be able to get out of an orchestra you've never stood in front of in the space of about 10 to 12 minutes. So that was tricky. The smallest thing we did was Mozart 39 and Beethoven 5. That was the small rep in the audition. Everything else was massive. So it was interesting.
You have to have an extraordinary memory, don't you, to be able to stand out there, walk out there, have 10 minutes, warm up, and then you're into it. Because this is the trial, is it? There's no rehearse?
Well,
that is the rehearse.
The trial is the rehearsal.
Yeah.
They didn't. The only piece I ran through without rehearsing was the first movement of Beethoven 5. I thought, actually what they want to know from this is, can you just do this on the money with no rehearsal if you need to?
And you did.
I did, yeah. Luckily, I'd done that in auditions before in Paris and stuff, so I felt reasonably confident.
Oh, it's very impressive.
Yeah.
And so as assistant conductor, presumably you'll get to do quite a few of the concerts.
It's really good. I mean, the job at SNO has been on my hit list, definitely, top 10 jobs you could possibly get before you have an agent, because it involves so much conducting. A lot of the assistant jobs, you do the listening and you do a lot of feedback and soak it all in, learn a lot, but never get to actually get on the podium. But I'll do all of the children's concerts, most of the sort of community outreach work. I get to go on all of the international tours with them, and there's the odd rehearsal already that I know that Peter can't do, so
Who's Peter, the music director?
Peter Ungen, the music director. So it's a very hands-on role. The guy who did it previously, who's also Canadian, he ended up doing all sorts of things, like recording some of the national anthems for the Olympic Games with them, and, had a great time, a lot of experience.
What is it with you Canadians, Andrew?
We're taking over. Nikki Choi, my friend, past winner Michael, he just won Concertmaster of Metropolitan Orchestra as well.
Oh, that's right,
so
working with Yannick.
Yeah, that's 2 Canadians at the Met. Yeah.
So you've been here, 2 years now?
Yeah, almost 2.5 actually. I have my residency now, so I'm a Kiwi.
Oh,
great.
Good. You were assistant principal second in Montreal Symphony before coming here, and I wondered how differently do the French Canadians play French music?
They have quite strong traditions there, sort of ways of using vibrato, a lot of surges in the bow, sort of flautando playing. Of course, Charles Dutoit was great at shaping Debussy and Ravel, and also the Russian music there in Montreal. So I was grateful for my 5 years there. I learned a lot about French music that I think I've been able to take to APO.
Yeah, and so playing the Ravel and the Chausson this week, what sort of areas are you concentrating on in your own personal preparation?
Intonation's always the main thing. The interesting thing about both these pieces, they're sort of more free than a lot of the concerto repertoire. There's a lot of tempo changes and rubato playing in these pieces. So one of the big challenges will be getting everything together with Holly and the orchestra. We actually haven't started yet, so we're going to have the first rehearsal tomorrow.
I have warned the orchestra that these are not like normal concertos. They have to be listening to every quaver subdivision to keep watching and keep listening and be very flexible. That's
one of the really important things, isn't it, when you're working with, an orchestra that's not playing all the time like St Matthews, and you've played with them 2 or 3 times now, Holly, is giving them the confidence to know what their job is in this particular instance.
Yes, and I think with a lot of smaller orchestras and orchestras that aren't full-time professional, you sort of have to prioritise a bit.
Yeah.
So for the French repertoire we're doing, we talked a lot about rhetoric the other night, which was sort of tongue-in-cheek, but also that, the flautando playing, this light, lithe, gossamer kind of sound that you want to get, in this instance, is probably a little more important than absolute accuracy of very fast figures. If I'm going to have to prioritise what works with them for the sound they create. And especially because in the second half they're doing a really big, heavy-bowed Russian piece, which over the tea break they need to completely change what their right arm is doing and probably what their left hand is doing as well in terms of the type of vibrato and the speed of it. And so all of that we're talking about quality of sound and different ways of sound production to evoke two very different worlds, although they're closely connected in terms of 19th century international life. France and Russia were very close, but still
Tchaikovsky has his own language.
He does.
Yeah.
Even within the Russians, he has his own language.
And you would have worked on Tchaikovsky's work already, I would think, quite a lot,
yes.
wouldn't you?
Well, last year I did a Tchaik with them, did Tchaik 4, and harking back to my ballet days, I know every ballet score inside out as a musician, but also as a dancer. So I love doing Tchaikovsky. What
a good preparation for being a conductor, being a dancer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Light on your feet and all that.
It's funny though, you do have to shift your centre of energy. It's very high as a ballet dancer. It's sort of up in your rib cage. And
that's right. When it's grounded
really
as a conductor,
have to learn to go a bit more yogi to get it lower.
Now, this whole business about women conductors, I think you've thoroughly broken the glass ceiling. And I'm just about to speak to Nicolette Freyon. I don't know if you know her, but she's an Australian conductor, and she is the conductor of the Australian Ballet Orchestra.
Yes, she has been for years.
Yes, that's right, since 2002. Yeah. Are there still any stigmas left, any areas where it's a no-go, or have women now made their presence felt as conductors internationally?
I think there's certainly still reservations.
What sort of reservations?
About whether we're physically capable of doing it, about whether we're artistically capable of doing it. But usually it's either very small geographic pockets, say Austria, some of the Germanic countries really struggle sometimes, and it can be very unreasonably rude to a particularly young woman conductor. And also certain age groups, so much older people. Players and existing conductors and teachers sometimes struggle with it, but they're now the minority by far. And I think what's really interesting to observe at the moment is sort of my generation and the one coming after me. We don't have a problem with our gender. I think when I look at a lot of women conductors, particularly slightly older than me, you can kind of see their own discomfort about it, and so all of this strange gender behaviour comes out of being overly masculine or overly sexualised, and all this sort of awkwardness about it, in the same way that some male conductors do, or anyone in a business, any position of standing in front of a group of people, if they're, say, struggling with their sexuality or something, it comes out. You can see it, and you just can't communicate with an orchestra if the first thing they see is an identity issue.
That's right, and you've got to just be yourself. You've got to be comfortable up there. I mean, there's all of us watching you, little you, in front of that big ensemble, and we want to feel that you are relaxed, happy, in control.
Absolutely. And I think this new generation of conductors coming through, certainly the women, maybe the men too, I don't know, just couldn't care less, really. Neither can the players. I mean, no one talks about it. It doesn't come up. It's
not an issue.
No, not at all. It's just every now and then there'll be a comment in the media from a much older conductor or audience member, or certainly not management. I think orchestral management, they know that people are watching and people have expectations, and they're realising they can make an awful lot of money out of us. Because
one way of looking at it.
Well, I mean, sadly, we are still paid considerably less than, the pay gap is still there. I think, we're all a little more desperate to get the work still. So
they will offer
women will do it for less
yes.
to get the opportunity still.
I wonder if it's the same with concert masters, Andrew?
In terms of salary, you mean? Or
Expectations.
I have no idea. It's
usually... you wouldn't.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's that's a very interesting perception that you might be able to offer somebody less and they're more keen to get the job, and therefore they'd take it and wouldn't argue.
Could be. I do know that there's more and more female concert masters today than there was 10 or 20 years ago, but sadly the conducting realm hasn't quite caught up yet, and I think it's really important that it does. So.
I noticed that you're up for another job. You start a trial in October over in Illinois.
Yes,
Holly.
That's right. Yeah.
Music director, Illinois Philharmonic Orchestra. What sort of ensemble are they, and what will the trial involve?
As far as I can gather, they're basically the third orchestra in the larger Chicago area, so the Chicago Symphony and then is it Chicago Sinfonietta or Chamber Orchestra or something?
It's the Civic.
Yeah. And Illinois Phil are actually a really good sort of fifth tier small symphony orchestra. And oddly enough, the guy who's leaving the post had the job at RSNO a few years ago, David Dunsmeyer. So there's a little connection there.
Ooh, sounds to me like it might be a bit of serendipity going on.
Yeah. I did write to him. I said, I promise I'm not stalking you. I'm not. But we had actually met a couple of years ago. I'd assisted him on something, and he enjoyed working with me and said, America would be a smart place for you to be looking. So when the job came up, it was sort of an obvious thing to apply for.
Yeah, well, the season opener 1st of October.
Yeah, and good rep too, really nice rep.
That's right, Ives. Have you worked on Ives works before?
I know the unanswered question really well, but I've never conducted it. The Sibelius violin concerto that we're doing with it, I've never done. But Eroica in the second half, which I think pairs really beautifully with the Ives, I've just done it with Dunedin Symphony. So
perfect.
It's nice to go into a trial thinking, I just rehearsed this a couple of months ago. Right. This is good.
Andrew, let's talk about your repertoire a bit more and what you're looking forward to in this concert this weekend. You've got the Chausson and the Ravel, completely different pieces, of course, but both extremely challenging and virtuosic.
Yes, the Chausson I've actually never performed either in recital or with orchestra before. Really looking forward to it. There's this certain magic to the music. I brought a Debussy quote. He saw the piece in 1913 and wrote, "Nothing could be more touching than this gentle dreaminess." One thing I didn't realize, actually, Chausson had originally subtitled the piece, Le Chant de l'amour triomphant, the Song of Love Triumphant, which is a short story by Turgenev, and it has to do with unrequited love, travels in the Far East, and a whole lot of drinking. So
kind of go together, don't they?
Yeah, usually. So I try and imagine that when I'm playing the piece. Yeah. Sigan, on the other hand, is just a wonderful display of virtuosity. I'd have to say, of all the sort of most famous composers, if you think Bach, Mozart, Brahms, Tchaikovsky, going right through to Bartók and Shostakovich, Stravinsky, Ravel did the best at incorporating the sort of hyper-virtuosic violin playing into his solo music, particularly in this piece. The use of left-hand pizzicato and really fast trills.
So you're going to have to help me choose now. Which one am I going to play? Because I haven't got time left to do both.
So
your choice.
Well, we've been talking about women composers and conductors and musicians. So let's go with Jeanette Neveu playing the Chausson.
Oh, this is a recording you picked. I think it's from the 1940s.
Yeah, a really old one. And
why do you like her?
Oh, she has this intensity to her playing that perfectly matches this piece.
Well, thank you very much for joining us both today. Get rid of that cold, Holly. I guess that's Dunedin temperatures for you, is it?
Well, actually, I've just come from London, but it's been a freezing summer over there, so it's probably actually I caught it there.
Oh, well, let's enjoy spring in Auckland. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva.
Thank you, Eva.
Andrew Beer, thank you, Andrew, and Holly Mathieson. Let's hear part of the Chausson. the brilliant violinist Jeanette Nouveau playing with the Philharmonia Orchestra, the Chanson Poème, which will feature our guest today, Andrew Beer, when he plays this work with the St Matthew's Chamber Orchestra this Sunday, 2:30 at, I think it's at the church actually, in Auckland. Also on the programme, Debussy, Afternoon of a Faun, the Ravel Cigan, and Tchaikovsky's No. 2 Symphony. Conductor will be Holly Mathieson.